2 Timothy 1:7 that God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline, or a sound mind, depending on your translation. God didn't create us with a spirit of fear, but so often we're consumed by fear and worry. We've all been living through unprecedented times over the last few years, and that is reflected in mental health data that's being collected at the moment. The number of people experiencing mental health issues in England is at an all-time high at the moment. In 2022, mental health referrals reached a record 4.6 million, which, for context, is up 22% from 2019. Approximately 1 in 4 people experience a mental health problem every year. 1 in 6 people report experiencing anxiety and depression in any given week. And the prevalence of moderate or severe depressive symptoms among adults in Great Britain rose during the pandemic. So before the pandemic, it was 10%. And then during the pandemic, it rose to as high as 21%. So more than double. And these stats, they don't just refer to people outside of church. That will be represented here too today. This isn't just something that other people are facing, or even now that a small minority of people are facing. This is now a crisis that we're all fairly likely to face at some point. You might be struggling with some of these things right now. Colossians tells us, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you are called to peace. We're called to not to fear, but to peace. And peace is the antidote to fear, isn't it? But sometimes we have a bit of a habit of reducing peace to like a brief moment of time where we say, oh, just take a breath and
why
it's
not
much better
talking
now.
to your phone?
But God's peace is so much
There's
more than
somebody
that.
talking.
I love to cook, and part of the reason that I find it so relaxing for anyone who's been to our house is that our kitchen is sort of here, and my children like to hang out here in the living room. So it's a lovely, like, tranquil place in the kitchen unless they come in. And I like to go into my sanctuary for a bit of peace and quiet.
He's
But peace is so much more than just a moment of stillness. We can feel the true peace of God's presence in our very bones.
It's all about God.
No matter what
So
situation we're facing.
it's nice, you know.
We have God's peace in us
Than me
and
talking
with us
nonsense.
wherever we go
Let her
and
to
whatever
talk
we're
and then-
facing.
It's nice message
Peace
from
isn't
God, from
actually
Jesus.
always a quiet or a still place in the
If
kingdom
the music
of God.
play,
Sometimes it
we're
looks
going
like
to turn off
facing
the radio,
the storm
okay?
that we're in
And
with
we're
the
going to
knowledge
talk.
that you're in the presence of
Okay?
God who can bring you
you
safely
make
through
sure
any
you're going to talk,
situation.
yeah?
And that doesn't mean, unfortunately, that sometimes you're not going to get a bit wet in the storm. When Jesus calms the storm in Matthew 8, it says that a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. The disciples were understandably a bit scared. They were facing a literal, huge and terrifying storm in front of them. But Jesus hadn't promised them a life without trouble. In fact, he promised the exact opposite. He told the disciples in John 16:33, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So often when we're caught up in anxiety or fear, or we're facing something that just seems insurmountable, we try and get through it in our own strength, don't we? Rather than crying out to the one who's already overcome everything that the world can throw at us. Jesus doesn't promise us peace, but he does promise us peace in him. So what happens when Jesus is faced with the storm? What I noticed when I was prepping this that I've never noticed before is he rebukes the disciples first, and then he rebukes the wind and the waves, and there is peace. He says to them, you have little faith, why are you so afraid? And I always used to imagine that he rebukes them out of anger. Like Jesus is just so enraged with the disciples. They're always getting it wrong, aren't they? They never have enough faith, they never trust in him enough. But now, with the wisdom of a bit of age and some time to reflect on this passage, I kind of see it as a loving rebuke rather than an angry one. We've got 3 kids, and our middle one, Rowan, she's quite a sensitive soul. She's a big feeler, which is lovely because she's very kind and empathetic, and she's very, loving towards other people. But it is a bit of a challenge when you're trying to get her ready for bed at night, and she wants to discuss at great length all of the things that I have said that have wounded her in the day. All the things that she has said that she thinks might have wounded someone else. And she likes to discuss every single detail. We're talking it could be an hour. In the morning, listen, and I discuss things with my children. And then in the reserves are a bit depleted, if I'm a bit hangry or I need a cup of tea. But Owen, because she is such a feeler, she always has what I feel is a slightly disproportionate reaction to if I've lost my temper. Or if she's done something as well that really lives there. And what we always do afterwards, many, many minutes down the line, when she's calmed down, we always have a little cuddle. And we try and chat through, what has happened. And she started to do this, heartbreaking thing where she says, I thought you didn't love me anymore. And oh my gosh, gets you right there.
It's like
and I
you
always
just
say
said.
to her, there is
Her
nothing
son
that
is
you
like
can do
you.
that will make me stop loving you. Sometimes I do
Are
get
you
cross.
listening?
Sometimes I lose my temper. But I will always love you. And in that moment, what I'm doing is I'm rebuking her, right? I'm rebuking her reaction to the situation, and I'm rebuking her belief about me that I don't love her anymore. But I'm doing it all from a place of love, not anger. And I like to think that that's what Jesus does when he rebukes the disciples in the boat. It comes from a place of correction because of love, not anger. Because it is natural to feel fear when we're in danger, or hopelessness when we're in a dark place. But Jesus doesn't reject us when we feel this way. He meets us where we are, and he lovingly corrects us. So what do we do when we feel like we are facing a storm and Jesus is asleep? In Matthew 8, the water's coming into the boat, and it seemed to the disciples that Jesus, their teacher, their protector, was asleep. How often in life does it feel like we are facing something terrifying, something that is too big for us, and that God is quiet when we're calling out to him? I love the Psalms because they are such an amazing reminder to us as Christians that it is okay to be honest with God, to call out to him, to express your feelings when you're scared, or you're angry, or you're filled with joy, or you're rejoicing, or even when you feel like he's not listening. Psalm 22 says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. 2021 and 2022 were 2 of the hardest years that I have faced in my life so far, and hopefully at all. I was faced with death, both globally and in my personal life as well, illness, hurt, fear, anxiety, and doubt. And a funny little thing struck me last week when I was thinking about this, that in 2021, I turned 33, which is the year in Jesus' life that he had his hardest year. Because do you know what happened to Jesus when he was 33? He faced betrayal and pain and ultimately death on a cross. But God raised him to life again, and God raised me to life again too. God had the power to resurrect Jesus, and he has the power to resurrect us, me and you as well, no matter how hopeless the situation feels. A few months ago, I came along to the evening service, and at the time I was still in a pretty bad place, and I was feeling lots of anxiety and lots of doubt about God and his love for me and the promises that he'd spoken over me. And we sang a song that night that talks about bones. And we sang it again tonight, guys, because God is faithful. And it was such a great reminder to me tonight when I was feeling anxious about this, that God is still there, and he is still reminding us of the promises that he's spoken over us. And that night when I heard that song, it reminded me of where it says dry bones in the Bible, which is in Ezekiel 37 verse 1 to 6. And it says this: the hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. He asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I said, Sovereign Lord, you alone know. And something that really jumped out to me when I read this, is that it says that the bones were very dry. And I don't know how much you guys know about the human body. Lots of you are studying medicine, so hopefully more than me. But I'm about to go very deep and scientific. The body, inside, quite a wet place. So if you've ever very scientific. If you've ever broken a bone and it's come through the skin, there is blood, there is gore, there are things that I don't understand. Bones are not dry things. And it struck me, like, if we were to die, it would take an incredibly long time for our bones to be dry. For bones to be very dry, the bodies that they've come from would have to have been dead for a really, really long time. And the passage goes on to say, this is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. And this just summed up to me so perfectly how I was feeling at that time. Like I was just dry bones lying in a desert. I felt like I was beyond God's help, that I was beyond his hope. I just felt dry. But the Lord spoke those words to me, and he actually speaks them twice in the passage. I will make breath into you, and you will come to life. And I think that speaks as to how God, he didn't just make us and breathe life into us when he first made us, but he goes on over and over and over again, breathing life into us. No matter how dry we feel, no matter how far away from him we feel, and no matter how full of fear we feel like we are, God can and he will make his breath enter you, and you will come to life if you let him. Even the driest of bones can be made into functioning bodies with blood and tendons and breath when the power of God enters them. God can rebuild you piece by piece until you're alive again. Towards the end of last year, I went to a women's conference and we sang a new song, new to me anyway. When I feel like ruins, you see foundations to build your kingdom here. We sometimes feel like we're too far gone. We're too filled with fear for God to love us, let alone to use us. But God sees our ruins as the foundations for his kingdom. He sees our bones as the foundation for his life to be breathed into us. And since that day, God has been slowly rebuilding me. And I've faced setbacks. You might have noticed that we're living in a very fallen, very broken world, and we will keep facing fear and death and brokenness. But we can do it with the breath of God inside us and the presence of God going before us, going behind us, and beside us. God isn't scared of our mess. He just wants us to bring it to him so that he can rebuild us. There is not one person in the Bible who hasn't felt fear or doubt or hopelessness. And I hope that encourages you today. Even Jesus did. The night before he was crucified, he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." On the cross, before he gave up his life, he quoted the psalm that I read earlier, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So many of the people that we see doubting or feeling fear or hopelessness in the Bible are leaders or people that we might think of as heroes of the faith. Even Jesus himself. Fear and doubt and pain don't exclude you from the kingdom of God. They're the building blocks that God can use to build his kingdom in you and through you. The passage from Colossians that we read at the start talks about peace, right? And how we should live as people of peace. Now in our translation, it says, as members of one body, you were called to peace, and be thankful. But there is no word for and in biblical Greek. This is all just one statement. As people who think should be thankful. Remembering God's goodness and his kindness is above our current situation. People sometimes say there's like a real simple formula that you can use to remember when you want to pray. and that is TSP. You've probably heard it before. Teaspoon. Thank you, sorry, and please. And we always want to start by thanking God for his steadfast love and his faithfulness. And these can be the things that pull us through when we're coming up against darkness and fear in our lives. There's a really simple thing you can do, which is to keep a prayer journal. It can just be a way of like noting down things that you're praying for, things that you're hoping for, and you can look back on it and see the things that you've prayed for where God has answered your prayers. Maybe one room with my sister when I was a teenager is where we would pray together every night, and we would write down our prayers and the people that we were praying for, and we would try and listen to God and see what he might be saying to us, and we'd write it down. To be honest, I completely forgot that we even did this till we found this prayer journal. But when I went back and I had a look through it, there were so many answered prayers in there. And Alex came across one page and it had like different letters of the alphabet on it. And he said to me, what was it you were praying about? And I said, oh, well, each of those letters represents one of our friends that we were praying for to become Christians. And his name was on there. And I don't think of myself as a great evangelist by any means. It doesn't come naturally to me to talk about Jesus to people who don't know Jesus already. I'm quite a big people pleaser, and I'm always a little bit scared, to be honest, that people will be offended or horrified. So it's not something that is comfortable for me. But there was something about Alex, and we went into it in case you think that's what it is, that I just felt like God had just really put him on my heart, and I just felt like I need to keep inviting this guy to church. So I did, and he kept saying no, but I just kept doing it anyway, because I felt like God had asked me to. So, and till we found this journal, I honestly didn't even remember that we've been praying at the moment, and things are just falling into place for you. Or whether you feel like you're really up against it right now and life is really tough, you can choose to lift up your eyes and bring it to Jesus.
Hello, Amen.
You can choose to give thanks to God in the calm and in the storm.
Hi, Olivia.
He truly cares about the mess in your life,
Hey, Danny.
as well as the successes and the joys. He wants to rebuild you when you feel like things are in ruins. When you feel like you're dry bones in a valley of dust.
You mean?
He wants to be with you in the storms of your life. Earlier on, I read the start.
Oh, Siri, that's not nice. Hi, Lloyd. Amen. Good morning. Have a blessed Sunday. Assalamualaikum, Sadiq. Bye-bye, guys. We are here.